Welcome back, vintage camera lovers, and join me on a trip back to 2003 where we'll visit the EOS 10D, Canon's most affordable DSLR to date. This 6-megapixel DSLR was the first in an enormously popular series, which set the standard for Canon semi-pro bodies, while crucially at an attainable price for many enthusiasts. Just over 2 decades ago, the 10D was launched at a body price of $1,500, but today you can pick one up for closer to $50. I grabbed one from MPB for just £35 and took it to the streets of Brighton and London to see what it could do 21 years after it was first released. The 10D wasn't of course Canon's first DSLR. They collaborated with Kodak for a number of eye-wateringly expensive DSLRs in the mid-90s, starting with the DCS-1 and 3, both launched in 1995. These were followed by the D2000 and 6000 in 1998, but it wasn't until the D30 in the year 2000 when Canon built its first 100% homegrown model. This 3-megapixel body began to reveal Canon's vision for how a semi-pro body should look and feel, but at $3,000 it was still way out of reach for many of us. If you're interested, I have another video all about it. Technology moves pretty fast though, and in 2002 the D60 doubled the resolution to 6 megapixels with a new CMOS sensor and came in at a much more affordable price of $2,000. Then just 1 year later in 2003 the 10D adopted the same sensor but refined the design and reduced the price further to $1,500. Now later that year Canon produced an even cheaper version, the EOS 300D or Digital Rebel, that shared the same 6-megapixel sensor but simplified the body and features to come in at just $1,000 or pounds, and I've got a video all about that one too if you're interested. But this review is all about the 10D and how it set the standard for many elements that we still see across Canon's interchangeable lens cameras over 2 decades later. And even in 2003, Canon clearly saw it as part of an important new series, resetting the model number and changing the letter D from a prefix to a suffix. This also further helped differentiate them from Nikon's DSLR models, which all started with a D. In terms of looks, the 10D on the right is clearly inspired by the older D30 on the left. The shape of the grip and position of the shutter release, the dial on the left shoulder with an LCD information screen on the right, and the large clicky thumb wheel on the rear are all shared between both models. But pick them up and you'll immediately feel a difference in construction, with the newer 10D adopting magnesium alloy for its shell, making it feel more confident, almost like a mini EOS 1D. Atop the left shoulder is the main mode dial with 6 scene presets: green square auto, traditional program, time and aperture value as Canon calls them, full manual, and Canon's automatic depth of field or ADEP mode. You can select shutter speeds from 4,000th of a second to 30 seconds plus bulb, while the top flash sync speed is 200th of a second. Atop the viewfinder head you'll find a pop-up flash activated by a button on the side, and there's also a hot shoe for mounting external speedlight flash guns. On the right shoulder you'll find a large LCD screen with an orange backlight for easier viewing in dim conditions. This provides a wealth of shooting information at a glance, including the exposure, shots remaining, the image quality, white balance, AF mode, drive mode, ISO value, metering mode, and a compensation scale which can be used for both exposure and flash. 3 dedicated buttons along the top of the screen allow you to adjust 2 settings each, using either the front finger dial or the rear thumb wheel, both turning with very satisfying clicky feedback. Now I know I sound like a broken record, but maximum respect to the Canon designer responsible for this rear thumb wheel, as it's always been one of my all-time favourite camera controls. Just so satisfying to turn and push that chunky button in the middle. Round the back, the wheel is obviously the dominant control, but you'll also see 2 switches alongside it. The lower one used to power up the camera, while the upper one enables or disables the wheel. Now I've never accidentally found myself turning this wheel, so I just leave it enabled all the time. Eagle-eyed Canon fans may also notice 3 buttons on the upper right side, with the leftmost one dedicated to resetting the focusing point to a predefined position. Meanwhile, the right-hand button in this group is used to adjust the actual AF point itself using the top LCD screen or the viewfinder for feedback. Now, as live view didn't arrive on the Canon DSLR until the 40D, composition on the 10D is with the optical viewfinder alone. This pentaprism delivers a nice bright image with 95% coverage and 0.88 times magnification. The 7-point AF system is a big upgrade over the more basic 3-point system on the previous D60, I believe inherited from the EOS 30 film SLR, albeit without that camera's eye control. The 7 AF points arranged as a cross are displayed as rectangles in the viewfinder, which light up red when active. Note as a cost-saving exercise on the later budget 300D, its active points were indicated by a simple red dot. Meanwhile, the shutter, aperture, compensation scale and shots remaining in the buffer during a burst are displayed below. The 10D's main colour screen employs a 1.8-inch panel with 118K dots and is used for playing images, now with up to 10 times magnification, and navigating menus in a single long list. No separate pages here. Also note the custom settings menu near the bottom, allowing you to adjust exposure increments, register an AF area for that new button I mentioned a moment ago, configure the JPEG file that's stored with RAW files, and also choose the flash sync curtain amongst many more. On the left side of the body, a single rubber flap covers the ports, although mine is split and is no longer attached to the body. At the top is a mini USB port used for data transfer only, and that's at 1.1 speeds, alongside a 3.5mm composite video output for TV slideshows. At the bottom are a PC sync port for external lighting and an N3 type remote terminal. Behind the door on the grip side is the card slot, accommodating compact flash memory, either standard Type 1 or thicker Type 2 cards, the latter including the IBM microdrive. Since FAT32 formatting is also supported, you can use cards larger than 2GB in size. Meanwhile, underneath the body is the battery compartment, with the 10D powered by Canon's BP511 lithium-ion pack, which should be good for about 500 shots. No, like most cameras of this time, you can't charge the battery internally over USB. Also, notice the circular compartment alongside for the CR2025 battery to back up the clock and settings. Like other Canon DSLRs, the EOS 10D is equipped with a standard EF lens mount, providing access to the vast EF lens catalogue from Canon and third parties, with its APS-C sensor reducing their field of view by 1.6 times. In the absence of a wide zoom though, designed for APS-C cameras, Canon offered the 10D in a kit with the EF 24-85 3.5 to 4.5, which, thanks to the sensor, became equivalent to 38-136mm. Only a few months later, the cheaper EOS 300D or Digital Rebel launched with a new kit zoom, sporting a wider 18-55 range. This was the first in a new series of EFS lenses designed exclusively for APS-C bodies, employing a modified bayonet that prevented them from being used on larger formats. Notice the red dot on the 300D's mount for aligning traditional EF lenses, while the white square aligns EFS lenses. Now, while the 10D also had an APS-C sensor, this body predated this new mount, unfortunately ruling out the use of any EFS lenses. Now, subsequent models in the series from the 20D onwards could all use EF or EFS lenses, but the 10D was limited to EF alone, making models like the 17-40 f4L your best bet for a standard range. Meanwhile, the 6MP APS-C sensor, inherited from the D60, employed CMOS technology when most rivals, including Nikon, were still using CCDs. The maximum image size is 3072 by 2048 pixels, and the sensitivity runs from 100 to 1600 ISO with an H option equivalent to 3200 ISO. From the quality section, you can choose large, medium or small resolution JPEGs, each with 2 compression levels, or choose to record in RAW. While there isn't a RAW plus JPEG mode here, the RAW file is still stored with a JPEG for playback, and you can set its quality from the custom menus. New to the 10D was the chance to adjust the image parameters, including sharpening, contrast and saturation, and there was also the chance to change the colour space to Adobe RGB. Working alongside the sensor was Canon's new Digic processor, first introduced on the PowerShot G3. This reduced power consumption, accelerated image processing, and also enabled some new features like FAT32 formatting. While the maximum burst speed remained the same 3 frames per second as the D60, the faster processor helped extend the buffer to 9 frames, and here's how that sounds. Impressive stuff. No, seriously, it was impressive stuff for a $1,500 DSLR in 2003. Meanwhile, today the 10D remains an easy camera to get working. Used bodies will almost certainly need a new battery pack, but the BP511 was employed by so many Canon cameras that replacements are easy to find. Again, like most DSLRs of that time, the battery can only be charged externally using a separate AC unit, but again, replacements of those are also readily available. It's also fairly easy to find compact flash memory cards that'll work in the 10D, and if you don't have an external card reader, you can always access them directly from the camera through its mini USB port, albeit at fairly slow 1.1 speeds, and you will need a suitable cable. Which brings me to my verdict with my traditional slideshow of images taken with the 10D in the present day. I decided to embrace the interchangeable lens concept and dump the boring kit zoom in favour of a thrifty nifty 50, in this case a recent EF 50mm 1.8 STM, which worked just fine. After several generations of gradually evolving semi-pro DSLRs, Canon really hit its stride with the 10D. The earlier D30 and D60 may have been their first homegrown bodies, but it was the 10D in 2003 where the series number was reset and the letter D moved to the end. Canon was already satisfied by the quality from the D60 6MP CMOS sensor, but this time packed it into a tougher body, almost like a mini 1D, tweaking the controls and crucially reducing the price. DSLRs may have been steadily falling in cost over the years, but the 10D became more affordable than ever, making it the natural choice for enthusiasts. The 20D arrived the following year sporting a new 8MP sensor, 9-point autofocus, faster 5 frames per second bursts, and compatibility with EFS lenses. New models continued to arrive roughly every 18 months until the 50D in 2008, but from that point onwards Canon split the line into the even higher end 7D in 2009 and the simpler 60D in 2010, repositioning this double-digit series as more consumer than semi-pro. Upgraded bodies subsequently slowed to a roughly 3-year cycle, with the 70D in 2013, 80D in 2016, and finally the 90D in 2019, and this would become the last model in Canon's double-digit DSLR series. But the original 10D's design DNA can be seen in each one of those DSLRs, not to mention recognisable in several newer mirrorless models. It's a classic body representing the start of Canon's imperial DSLR phase, although if you fancy reliving this period, it makes more sense to go for the more capable 20 or 30D on the used market for much the same price. Or how about splurging a little on the 40D, which introduced live view to Canon DSLRs in 2007. I remember reviewing it when I lived in New Zealand, with one of my earliest YouTube videos showing how live view would prove invaluable when focusing through a telescope. You could even connect a Garmin GPS unit and embed coordinates into your images, a process that I detailed in a second video. Does anyone remember that? And the 40D body is still readily available for under $100 or pounds. So did you own one of the Canon double-digit DSLRs? Did you feel the 60D betrayed the series? Or were you one of the people who embraced the extra power of the EOS 7D? As always, I'd love to hear about your experiences with your first digital cameras, and if you enjoy these retro reviews, the best way to encourage me to make more of them is to give my channel a follow. Don't forget to click the notifications and watch as many of my videos as you dare. There's plenty to watch here, so I hope you get to check some of them out. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.